My first ever Pokemon game was Pokemon Sapphire back when I was 5 years old, way back in 2002. I remember getting my blue Game Boy Advance and how my mom and dad did everything they could to find one for me on Christmas. Then they went above and beyond and got me a Nintendo DS with Pokemon Diamond in 2006 for Christmas. Those games had hours and hours of playtime, and it was the most basic concept. You find a Pokemon, you catch a Pokemon. You battle with the Pokemon, you win with the Pokemon. It stood that way for years until things changed in the mid 2010s. Now, Nintendo is releasing a bunch of things like Mario, Splatoon, Smash Bros., but for the most part, the concept of those games is staying relatively consistent. Mario explores the world, battles a bunch of Goombas, makes sure that he gets Bowser and protects the Mushroom Kingdom. You have things with Splatoon where basically you're just painting, and then Smash Bros. Where it's just a sidestepping fighting game, which is fine, but nothing, changed in terms of the mechanics, really. With Mario and things like Mario Odyssey, sure, new abilities were unlocked, but at the same time, it still stood faithful to what Mario is. Just an exploring, happy plumber who has abilities, fights a bunch of Goombas, and tries to get the princess. But with Pokemon, it just seems like they're changing things to the point where it's becoming unrecognizable from what it actually started with. I'm old-fashioned when it comes to Pokemon. For me, this is how I see Pokemon games. Gen 1 set the precedent. Gen 2 was basically Gen 1 with a few tweaks and new Pokemon. Gen 3 added new things like the Battle Frontier and again new Pokemon. It added a bunch of new characters as well that I really liked. The concept of teams became more prevalent rather than Team Rocket. We added Team Magma and Aqua, something later on down the line is going to continue. So for me, the game that I started with, I'm glad that this is the one that I started with. Gen 4 changed the graphics landscape due to it being on a new system. It's on the DS instead of the Game Boy, and Pokemon Platinum is hailed as like the best Pokemon game ever, and for good reason. The story was awesome, the graphics were awesome, the fact that you could go into the underground was awesome, the Pokédex let you do a couple of new things, as well as having a step counter, which I just thought was nice. It showed the status of your Pokemon. Everything was just a step up from Gen 3 done the right way, but it still stood true to what Pokemon is. Battling them, catching them, fighting trainers, 8 gym leaders, the Elite Four, and the champion. Gen 5 took a new approach to graphics and did something no other game did yet. You could only use Gen 5 Pokemon in your playthrough, then post-game you can use others. And this concept I absolutely loved. New gen, new trainers, new locations, same concept of 8 gym leaders and the Elite Four and champion, but only the new gen Pokemon. You're in a new region, therefore you should be only seeing new Pokemon. This stood true to the concept of a new region with new Pokemon. You can only use those, and this was awesome. And the battle subway was extremely fun. Same for the battle simulation to see how good your Pokemon are. And this is basically where I went into the rabbit hole of IVs and EVs because I learned about how well they could be, which was just something that was so fascinating. Like, it was a new meta within the game, and it was just so cool to see. And the dream world, for days I would do my best to try and get the hidden potential of so many Pokemon, link my accounts, and just like every other day I would check just to see if I can get a little bit closer to getting that, and I've never felt more connected to a game. So for me, this was really, really fun. And Gen 5, I had over 600 hours, and I actually have a picture which I'm going to pop up on screen so that way you guys can see. Gen 6 took it a step further in terms of graphics. The battle simulation remained. EV and IV training were now way easier due to the incredible punching bag system. And the new twist, Pokemon can go Super Saiyan and Mega Evolve for a short period of time with enhanced stats and new abilities, and this entire concept changed the meta of Pokemon battles online. I had loads of hours trying to breed a 5 or 6 IV Pokemon and EV train it with my specifications, and again, thanks to the punching bag system, it was way easier to do so. I also liked on how on the bottom screen you could see your Pokemon like jumping around a little bit. It was just cute to see, and that was something that I really liked. Gen 6 was disliked by some people, but for me it was like the tail end of the peak of Pokemon, which were Gens 4 and 5. So 6 was pretty much the end of what I said was a good era. Gen 7, 8, and now 9 have changed my feelings on Pokemon heavily. I'll just be honest, I'm not a fan of where the series has been going. I have less than 70 hours in Gen 7, less than 40 hours in Gen 8. I beat them, and I had no urge to go back and do anything. At least with Gen 7, we could still Mega Evolve and somewhat train in terms of IVs, but Totem battles weren't really fun. Again, I'm all for adding new things for a game to keep it interesting, but Pokemon going slightly bigger, I don't know, I guess, but A for effort. Z moves were okay. Again, adding a new thing like a super attack, interesting concept. Can't really knock it for that. And the story in Elite Four wasn't too terrible. Ultra Beasts were pretty interesting, although I didn't like post game how you can just catch like 4 of the same Ultra Beasts, because now that kind of makes them seem less rare. But that might just be a nitpick. So it was all pretty enjoyable. So it was an okay game for me. Gen 8, I had no fun with. The story was boring, there was no post-story for me, no Megas, no Z moves, but you can make your Pokemon go very, very big, and then their type move changes. So basically Flamethrower, which is a fire type move, becomes like Super Magma Blaster Cannon and does more damage. Oh, and your HP like doubles or even triples. They kind of had a quote-unquote Mega Evolution, a Gigantamax form, which is basically certain specific Pokemon. Just like how certain specific Pokemon could Mega Evolve with a stone, these Pokemon can change their form, and again, their HP like doubles, and I think maybe they get one special move, but alright, I guess. The wild area was just a big oasis, that's it. Now for me, I do have a gripe with the wild area, because as much as I do love exploring the scenery, that's completely fine. It's nice to see, it's nice to explore. The whole concept of an overview of a Pokemon, I'm not a fan of, because now you're taking away the hunting aspect of trying to find a specific Pokemon. Sure, you can go into the area and say, oh look, there's a Dratini, I will now go up to the Dratini. But in the older games, you had to go into an area, like in the water, and try and see if, is it going to be a Goldeen, a Staryu, is it going to be a Dratini? You had to hunt. Now they've just made it way easier. Sure, you could say to yourself, well, it's not always going to pop up. Okay, but you at least can see that it's going to pop up. In the old games, we never had to do that. So, I'm not a fan that they've just made it significantly easier. Sure, it's cool to see Pokemon chasing you, and there's a bunch of memes when it comes to it. But I just don't find it appealing as much, because I used to enjoy, like in Gen 3, going in that one patch of grass that Wally went into trying to find a Ralts. I remember specifically trying to get a Ralts, and for me, that was part of the fun, trying to find it. So that way, when I did find it, it was so much more rewarding. And that brings us full circle to the next generation of Pokemon, Gen 9, Scarlet and Violet. As always, I'm a huge fan of Pokemon, so I do intend to get the game, but I also did want to explain some of the new and some of the interesting things that the game is adding. So, just like how Gen 7 had Z moves and Gen 8 had Gigantamax and Dynamax, Gen 9 has terrestrializing. So basically they become crystals and then they can change their type. So a Pikachu can normally terrestrialize into an electric type, but sometimes they can also become water or grass, dependent on, I don't know. I guess it's kind of like the hidden potential thing, where if you use hidden power, it's dependent on that specific Pokemon. So if they were bringing it to a concept like that, I think that that's very nice. That's a very nice nod to the old games where hidden potential had to be a specific type. So if you're terrestrializing and you become a specific type based on like the hidden potential, I think that that's a nice touch. Now, could it change the meta of games? Potentially, because now basically what you're doing is changing someone like, a Venusaur from a grass and poison to maybe a ghost, so him being hit with certain moves might be different, so it could definitely affect the meta. They also have raid battles now, so like in Gen 8 where you wanted to go for a specific Pokemon that was like a Gigantamax, like a Mr. Rhyme or a Butterfree. In this case, you're now trying to find a specific type terrestrialized Pokemon, and you can go again with 3 other people, try to beat it, and then at the end you have the opportunity to catch it. Now, the one thing that I do like that they added is that you don't have to wait on the other players to actually attack. It's just a free-for-all, just spam, 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 spam. I think they should have did that in Gen 8, so the fact they're doing that in Gen 9 is much better. But again, I really need to see how the gameplay goes. I really need to see how the story is, so something like that's important to me. Now, it does look like they're going to have gym leaders, which is nice. Again, that's something that is very important to me as an older fan, but I do need to see what else they're going to add. A good story is the foundation of a good game. They are also adding type variants, which again, nice. They've been doing that since Gen 7. That's good. Nothing crazy. We saw Wooper get something, and Wooper's cute, so that was a nice nod as well. But again, time will tell. In November, I do intend to get the game, but we'll see how it goes from there. Let me all know what you think in the comments below. Are you excited for the new Pokemon game coming in November? Do you think Pokemon is still good? What was your first ever Pokemon game, and what memory resonates with you the most when you started playing Pokemon? As always, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.